The political earthquake that just hit Washington has sent shockwaves through every corner of America, and what I'm about to reveal will completely change how you see the power games being played at the highest levels of government. For decades, we've witnessed political battles, but nothing quite like this explosive confrontation that's tearing apart the very fabric of our political establishment. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't just another partisan squabble that'll blow over in a news cycle. This is the kind of political bombshell that historians will write about for generations. The Trump versus Clinton saga has erupted into something far more dangerous and consequential than anyone could have predicted. And the implications are absolutely staggering. You see, most people think they understand what's happening in Washington right now. They believe it's just the usual back and forth between Democrats and Republicans, the same old political theater we've grown accustomed to over the years. But what's actually unfolding behind closed doors is a calculated war of information, leverage, and political survival that goes deeper than anything we've witnessed in modern American politics. What triggered this latest explosion wasn't some random political disagreement or campaign promise gone wrong. Instead, it was the release of documents so explosive, so potentially damaging to both sides of the political aisle, that it's forced sworn enemies to make moves they never thought they'd have to make. The House Oversight Committee dropped a political nuclear bomb this week that has everyone scrambling for cover. Here's what happened that changed everything. On Wednesday, emails surfaced that exposed connections, relationships, and conversations that both parties desperately wanted to keep buried forever. These weren't just any ordinary political communications. These were documents that revealed the intricate web of power, influence, and compromise that exists at the very top of American politics. The moment these emails became public, Donald Trump made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the political establishment. He declared that he would direct the Justice Department to launch investigations that could potentially implicate some of the most powerful figures in American politics. But here's where it gets interesting, and here's what most people are missing about this entire situation. Trump's announcement wasn't just a knee-jerk reaction to political pressure. This was a calculated political maneuver designed to shift the narrative and put his opponents on the defensive. By calling for investigations, he's essentially saying that if they want to play this game, he's prepared to escalate it to levels that could destroy careers, reputations, and political legacies on both sides. The documents at the center of this controversy reveal something that Washington insiders have known for years, but the American people are just now discovering. The relationships between powerful political figures extend far beyond what we see in public speeches and campaign rallies. Behind the scenes, there's a complex network of favors, obligations, and mutual dependencies that shape policy decisions and political strategies. What makes this situation particularly explosive is that we're not just talking about political rivals going after each other. We're witnessing something much more dangerous. Former political adversaries who spent years attacking each other are now finding themselves in the impossible position of having to work together to protect interests that transcend party lines. Take Hillary Clinton and Mike Pompeo, for example. These two figures spent years as bitter political enemies. Pompeo served under Trump and was one of Clinton's harshest critics, particularly regarding her email server controversy. Clinton, meanwhile, represented everything that Trump's administration opposed. Yet suddenly, they find themselves aligned on critical issues that could affect America's global standing and national security. This unprecedented alliance reveals something that most Americans don't fully grasp about how power really works in Washington. When push comes to shove, when the stakes get high enough, political labels become secondary to protecting the broader system that keeps everyone in power. It's not about Democrat versus Republican anymore. It's about insiders versus outsiders, establishment versus disruption. The timing of these revelations couldn't be more significant. We're not dealing with ancient history or forgotten political scandals. These developments are happening right now, in real time, as the country faces critical decisions about its future direction. Every move, every announcement, every leaked document is part of a larger chess game where the stakes are nothing less than control over the most powerful nation on Earth. But here's what's truly fascinating about this entire situation. The American people are watching this unfold through the lens of traditional political coverage, thinking they're seeing a straightforward battle between opposing parties. What they're actually witnessing is something far more complex and potentially dangerous. This is a battle for the soul of American democracy, fought with information warfare, strategic leaks, and carefully orchestrated public relations campaigns. The House Democrats didn't release those documents by accident. They calculated that the political damage to their opponents would outweigh any potential backlash. Trump's response wasn't spontaneous either. His announcement about directing Justice Department investigations was a warning shot across the bow, a message that he's prepared to use the full power of the federal government to fight back. What's particularly striking is how this battle is being fought in the court of public opinion. Both sides are making their case not just to other politicians or Washington insiders, but directly to the American people. They understand that in our current political environment, public pressure can be more powerful than backroom negotiations or traditional political horse trading. The documents themselves reveal conversations and relationships that paint a picture of American politics that most citizens never get to see. These aren't the sanitized, carefully crafted public statements we're used to hearing from our political leaders. Instead, they show the raw, unfiltered reality of how decisions get made and influence gets exercised at the highest levels of government. Congressional Republicans find themselves in an incredibly difficult position. Some are pushing back against Trump's announced investigations, warning that directing federal law enforcement in this manner risks undermining the credibility of our justice system. Others are rallying behind the former president, arguing that if Democrats want to weaponize information for political gain, Republicans should be prepared to respond in kind. The situation has created fractures within both parties that go far beyond traditional ideological differences. We're seeing politicians forced to choose between party loyalty and institutional integrity, between short-term political advantage and long-term consequences for American democracy. What makes this moment particularly dangerous is that we're not just talking about political careers or election outcomes. The decisions being made right now, the precedents being set, the boundaries being crossed, will have implications that extend far beyond any single administration or political cycle. The American people deserve to understand what's really at stake here. This isn't just another political scandal that'll be forgotten in a few weeks. This is a fundamental test of whether our democratic institutions can survive the kind of information warfare and political weaponization that we're witnessing right now. The battle lines have been drawn, and what we're seeing unfold is unlike anything in modern political history. Both sides are deploying tactics that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago, and the escalation shows no signs of slowing down. Every day brings new revelations, new accusations, and new evidence that this conflict has moved far beyond normal political discourse. Here's what most Americans don't realize about the current situation. The investigations that Trump has announced aren't just about settling old scores or getting political revenge. These are strategic moves designed to fundamentally alter the balance of power in Washington. When a former president announces that he'll direct federal law enforcement to investigate his political opponents, he's essentially declaring that the traditional rules of engagement no longer apply. The response from establishment figures has been swift and telling. When members of Trump's own party start pushing back against his announced strategy, it reveals deep fractures within the Republican coalition. These aren't just policy disagreements or tactical disputes. These are fundamental questions about how power should be exercised and what boundaries, if any, still exist in American politics. But here's where the story takes an even more dramatic turn. The documents that started this entire controversy are just the beginning. Sources close to the investigation suggest that what we've seen so far represents only a fraction of the potentially damaging information that could be released. Both sides are sitting on ammunition that could destroy careers and reshape the political landscape for decades to come. The strategic calculation behind these releases reveals something crucial about how modern political warfare actually works. It's not enough to simply defeat your opponents in elections or policy debates. The goal now is total political destruction, complete discrediting of opposing voices, and permanent damage to your enemy's ability to participate in public life. This is scorched earth politics at its most ruthless and effective. What makes this moment particularly volatile is that neither side can afford to back down. Trump's announcement about investigations puts enormous pressure on his opponents to respond in kind. They can't appear weak or passive in the face of what they see as unprecedented political weaponization. At the same time, they know that escalating further could trigger responses that damage their own interests and those of their allies. The American people are watching this unfold with a mixture of fascination and horror. On one hand, there's genuine appetite for transparency and accountability from political leaders who have operated with impunity for too long. On the other hand, there's growing concern that this kind of political warfare could permanently damage our democratic institutions and norms. Congressional dynamics have shifted dramatically in response to these developments. The traditional committee process, where investigations unfold gradually through hearings and document requests, has been completely bypassed. Instead, we're seeing information warfare conducted through strategic leaks, coordinated media campaigns, and direct appeals to public opinion. This represents a fundamental change in how political battles are fought and won. The role of federal law enforcement in this controversy deserves special attention. When political figures start directing investigations for clearly political purposes, it raises profound questions about the independence and integrity of our justice system. Career prosecutors and FBI agents find themselves caught between competing political pressures and their professional obligations to follow evidence wherever it leads. The international implications of this domestic political battle cannot be ignored. Foreign adversaries are watching closely as America's political establishment tears itself apart through information warfare and mutual destruction. Every leaked document, every announced investigation, every public accusation provides valuable intelligence about vulnerabilities and divisions within American leadership. What's particularly striking is how this controversy has exposed the limitations of traditional media coverage. Journalists and commentators trained to cover conventional political disputes struggle to adequately explain what's happening when the fundamental rules of engagement have changed. The usual frameworks for understanding political conflict simply don't apply to this level of mutual assured destruction. The economic implications are starting to become apparent as well. Financial markets hate uncertainty, and the kind of political chaos we're witnessing creates exactly the kind of instability that makes investors nervous. When government investigations can be weaponized for political purposes, it creates uncertainty about regulatory enforcement, policy consistency, and the rule of law itself. Behind the scenes, lobbyists and influence peddlers are scrambling to understand how this new reality affects their ability to operate. The traditional mechanisms for exercising influence, building relationships, and navigating Washington's power structure have been disrupted by this escalating conflict. Nobody knows which relationships will survive and which will become political liabilities. The role of technology and social media in amplifying this controversy represents another significant factor. Information that once would have been carefully managed through traditional media channels now spreads instantly across multiple platforms. Both sides are racing to control narratives and shape public perception in real time, with mixed results. What we're witnessing is nothing less than the weaponization of transparency itself. Documents and information that were once used as tools for accountability and good governance have become weapons in a broader political war. This transformation has profound implications for how democracy functions and whether citizens can trust the information they receive from their leaders. The human cost of this political warfare often gets overlooked in discussions about strategy and tactics. Real people, including career government employees, journalists, and even family members of political figures, find their lives disrupted by investigations, leaked documents, and public accusations. The collateral damage from this kind of political combat extends far beyond the principal combatants. As this situation continues to evolve, one thing becomes increasingly clear. We've crossed a threshold in American politics from which there may be no return. The precedents being set, the boundaries being crossed, and the weapons being deployed will reshape how political power is exercised for years to come. The question isn't whether this will change American democracy, but how fundamental those changes will ultimately prove to be. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the outcome of this political battle will determine not just who holds power, but how that power can be exercised and what constraints, if any, will limit its use. Every American has a stake in understanding what's really happening and what it means for the future of our democratic system. System means for the future of our democratic. The mechanics of how this political warfare actually operates reveal something most Americans never see. Behind every leaked document, every strategic announcement, every carefully timed revelation, there's a sophisticated apparatus of political operatives, communications specialists, and intelligence professionals working to shape outcomes. These aren't amateur-hour political stunts. These are precision operations designed to maximize damage while minimizing blowback. Consider the timing of these document releases. They didn't happen randomly, or because someone suddenly decided to clean out their filing cabinets. The decision to release this information now, at this particular moment in the political cycle, was calculated to achieve maximum impact. Political professionals understand that timing isn't just important, it's everything. Release information too early and people forget. Release it too late and it gets buried by other news. Release it at exactly the right moment, and you can change the entire trajectory of political events. The sophistication of these operations extends to how information gets packaged and presented to the public. Raw documents don't speak for themselves. They require interpretation, context, and strategic messaging to achieve their intended effect. Both sides employ teams of researchers, writers, and communications specialists whose job is to take complex political information and translate it into narratives that resonate with different audiences. What's particularly fascinating is how different audiences receive and interpret the same information in completely different ways. Trump supporters see the announced investigations as long overdue accountability for political corruption. Trump opponents see them as dangerous weaponization of federal law enforcement. The same documents that prove innocence to one side prove guilt to the other. This isn't just partisan spin. It's a fundamental breakdown in shared reality. The role of congressional leadership in managing this crisis reveals another layer of complexity that most Americans don't fully appreciate. Speaker Johnson's promise to expedite the voting process isn't just procedural efficiency, it's strategic damage control. By moving quickly, leadership hopes to contain the political fallout and prevent the situation from spiraling further out of control. But speed also means less time for careful deliberation and more opportunity for unintended consequences. The fact that this controversy has achieved the magic number of congressional signatures needed to force action demonstrates something crucial about how modern politics actually works. It's not enough to have good arguments or compelling evidence. You need the procedural mechanisms and institutional leverage to force action. The discharge petition process that's being used here represents one of the few tools available to bypass traditional committee structures and force votes on controversial issues. Behind the scenes, congressional staff members are working overtime to manage the political implications of every decision. These aren't just policy wonks analyzing legislation. These are political professionals calculating vote counts, assessing electoral consequences, and trying to position their bosses for maximum political advantage while minimizing potential damage. The human machinery of democracy is working at full capacity to process this unprecedented situation. The international dimension of this domestic political battle adds another layer of complexity that deserves serious attention. Foreign intelligence services don't need to hack American computer systems or plant spies in government agencies when American political leaders are voluntarily releasing sensitive information for domestic political advantage. Every leaked document, every public accusation, every revealed relationship provides valuable intelligence about how American power really operates. Allied nations are watching these developments with growing concern about American political stability and reliability. When political battles involve directing federal law enforcement to investigate opponents, it raises questions about whether American democratic institutions can maintain their independence and credibility. These concerns have real consequences for international cooperation, intelligence sharing, and diplomatic relationships. The economic ramifications of this political warfare extend far beyond immediate market reactions. Businesses that depend on stable regulatory environments find themselves trying to navigate a landscape where enforcement priorities can shift dramatically based on political considerations. The uncertainty created by weaponized investigations affects investment decisions, hiring plans, and strategic business planning across multiple industries. Financial institutions face particular challenges in this environment. When political figures can be targeted for investigation based on their associations rather than evidence of wrongdoing, it creates enormous compliance risks. Banks, investment firms, and other regulated industries must constantly reassess their relationships and exposure to avoid becoming collateral damage in political battles. The legal profession finds itself at the center of these developments in ways that create unprecedented ethical and professional challenges. Attorneys representing political figures must navigate between their professional obligations to their clients and the broader implications of their actions for democratic institutions. The traditional boundaries between legal representation and political strategy have become increasingly blurred. The truth is, we've just witnessed the opening moves of a political war that will define America for decades to come. This isn't the end of the Trump versus Clinton saga. It's the beginning of something far more dangerous and consequential. The weapons have been drawn, the battle lines established, and there's no going back to the way things used to be. What happens next will determine whether American democracy survives this unprecedented assault on its very foundations, and every single one of us has a role to play in that outcome.